Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you. If you're new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and if you're very familiar with the series, welcome back. I want to preface this video with the fact that there are going to be some slight tweaks to the way that my books beside my bed videos run, just in terms of the books that I'll be sharing, because the videos are essentially going to run the exact same way. However, I'm also going to be filming some either reading vlogs or book recommendation videos based around themes, and the books that I'm specifically reading for those videos I will not include in my books beside my bed videos. I might include the stats in here, but I won't necessarily talk about the books. So you will still hear about them, it will just be at a slightly different time. But that's the only significant change, I believe. This is my reading week from the 31st of May until the 5th of June. I read a total of 6 books this week, 1,870 pages, and my yearly reading total is 205 books. I have also finished off the Love in the Night readathon this week. So 3 of the things that I'm going to talk about came from the tail end of that readathon, and then I read a couple of extra books as well. I'm also in the process of completing another Heather Made Me Read It video. If you've watched the first one, which I'll leave linked on the screen, it's a series where Heather had recommended me 8 books, I think, and I read 4 in the first video, and I'm currently reading the second 4 for this week, so that vlog will come out a little bit later in the week as well. Okay, so into the books that I read. I finished off the Their Vampire Queen first set of 6 books this week. So I read books 5 and 6, which are Queen Takes Checkmate and Queen Takes Triune. These are by Jolie Sue Burkhart. They are vampire reverse harem stories, and the plot is very convoluted at this point, and there are lots and lots and lots of partners for Shara, the heroine of the story. And as people said, you start to sort of lose track of whose limbs are who and what's going on. But I found that the last 2 books in particular were very plot heavy, which is very different from the series. It starts off very, I don't want to say light on plot, but they were not super heavy on plot. And there was a lot of focus on the development of the relationships and the sex scenes, whereas we've started shifting into a lot more heavy world building, and the books themselves are actually longer. So technically these covered off on the sequel prompt for the Love in the Night readathon. While I appreciated the plot, I also felt like some of it felt like it was really drawn out just so that there would be plot in between the different sex scenes, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But I also think some of those scenes were a little bit info dumpy as well. So overall the series is one that I enjoyed, but I'm probably not going to continue reading any more books in the series. I think I'm done with it and the characters, but I'm glad that I read all 6 books and sort of had an idea of how this story arc was going to go. I also read, or technically reread, a short story by Sierra Simone called Sanguine. This was originally published in the Australia anthology that was released at the start of 2020. It was released in response to the Australian bushfires. It was to raise money. I still haven't read that anthology. I've only read one story from it, and it was this one, but Sierra Simone has recently re-released this as a short story on its own that you can purchase. I read it for the prompt to read a book that was a different format. I don't typically read short stories. I tend to read novellas more than I read short stories. But this one is a paranormal romance story between a vampire and an ex-priest slash ex-vampire hunter. The vampire is on holiday in the Whitsundays trying to enjoy some peace and quiet when he gets a knock at his door, the apartment that he's staying at, and it is this former priest. Well, at the time the vampire thinks that the priest is still a priest until told otherwise, and as it turns out, the priest has observed the vampire feeding off a victim but not killing them. And he noticed that the victim really enjoyed the experience, and so he is very intrigued because that is in direct contrast to what his training had taught him in the past. And so he's very curious about this vampire, and they have a discussion, they go on a date, and it is their relationship. It's super short, it's only about 30 pages long. Really enjoyed it. There was also a sneak peek for Saint, which is the next book in the Priest series, and I can't wait for it. I'm ready. Bring it on. I also read Cash by Jessica Gadsby-Alla. This is book 2 in the Henchman MC series. This is one of the books that I picked for my Read Digital TBR, so I'm glad that I've already started at least one book from that. It is a motorcycle club romance between Cash and Lo. Cash is the brother of the head of the Henchmen, and he's a very charming ladies' man who was quite a fun character in the first book. And Lo is the leader of the local paramilitary organization, and she was involved in helping the heroine out in the first book. So at the beginning of the story, a series of bombs go off in Navasink Bank, which is where all of these local criminal organizations are located. Cash and Lo are together when these bombs go off, and then they separate, and later Lo is attacked in one of her safe houses by a man that she has previously known, but we don't know his backstory. She ends up going back to the henchman headquarters for assistance because she wants to call in a favor for her assistance in the first book, and it's Cash that decides to help her, and he takes her home and he looks after her. And he slowly begins to get the story out of her while at the same time also investigating these bombings. So it is how they get closer together. Lo is quite prickly, and it's to do with her past, where she was in quite an abusive relationship. And once Cash finds out the details, he takes it upon himself to personally look into her situation. Cash is just a cinnamon roll of an elfery character, and Lo herself is a very strong, independent woman. They just complemented each other beautifully. So there are a lot of dark themes in here. So there is the history of abuse, there is a lot of violence. These characters all come from criminal organization, so there's a lot of bad things that go on, but I did really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to picking up the third book very soon. I also read Nancy Business by R.W.R. MacDonald, which is the follow-up book to The Nancys, which I read a couple of weeks ago, and I will leave that linked on the screen as well. I'm going to have a separate video review for this up on the weekend, so I'm not going to talk about it much here except to say it is a cozy mystery set in New Zealand. It is very fun, very funny, and also quite poignant at times. So I thoroughly enjoyed reading this one, but I will have a full review in a couple of days, so stay tuned. Finally, the last book that I'm going to talk about today is The Vet from Snowy River by Stella Quinn. This was a book that was sent to me for review by Myra and HarperCollins, so thank you very much to them. I also had a review copy on NetGalley. This is a small town romance set in rural Australia. It features a slightly prickly heroine, a single father. He's a bit of a sunshiny character because he's constantly looking on the positive side of things. So we open the story with Vera, who has just moved to the small town of Hanrahan and opened up a cafe. She is running from her past. We know at the very start that she is involved in some kind of legal battle back in the city, and that her elderly aunt, who is living in a nursing home / hospice care facility, is part of the reason why they're in Hanrahan, and that Vera is very dedicated to making sure that her aunt is in a safe place where she's being looked after. We also meet our hero, Josh, who's one of the local veterinarians. He works at a practice that is owned by his sister, but he is also a single dad, and he had left the town in his teens after a bit of a scandal when he got one of the student teachers at his school pregnant. As we find out in the story, there's a lot more to it than that. And now Josh has returned. His daughter visits him haphazardly. She's 15 and fantastic. She's a great character. But Josh is just trying to build a new life, and he comes across Vera and he's instantly smitten by her. But Vera is very reluctant to get involved in a relationship, and so it is their push-pull and how they finally end up coming together, and how Vera begins to very, very slowly open up to Josh. If I had to say one thing about the story, I wish that perhaps her journey to opening up to him had been a little bit tighter in the storytelling, but overall I did really enjoy the story. I loved the small town setting, I loved Josh's daughter, and I loved his sister. There's another story there, surely. I'm hoping that there will be a story about his sister and her romance with his best friend from high school. I just enjoyed this one. It was a lot of fun, and it was a nice, comforting afternoon read. Great for sitting down with a cup of tea. So I will have a full review for this on my blog coming very soon. All right, those are all the books that I read in the last 7 days. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking them up in the future. Alternatively, you can feel free to let me know something that you have read this week and enjoyed. Or if you want to let me know that you were here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave any kind of pet emoji in the comments box. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.